So let's do a quick recap. Protestants say faith alone saves, imputed righteousness saves, and regeneration saves. Here's the problem. When someone says, "I was saved because I was born again," that is not consistent with the claims of their theology, because regeneration, according to the Reformed view, is not a cause of justification in any way. Regeneration cannot be the formal cause, because they teach that the formal cause is alien righteousness of Christ that does not regenerate or change a person within. Regeneration cannot be the instrumental cause, because that would be faith alone, and regeneration is definitely distinct from faith in their theology. In short, there is nowhere for Protestants to logically fit regeneration into their theology without committing a contradiction. They might try to explain this, but either way they try, they will always refute Reformed theology. Whether they contradict the formal or the instrumental cause depends on what they claim regeneration does, but they will always necessarily contradict one of the two. If they say that regeneration is the means by which God saves, because it's the basis upon which God saves, then they contradict their formal cause, which is alien righteousness imputed. If they attempt to say that regeneration is not the basis, but is merely a necessary means or step one must do for God to bring them to salvation, then they contradict their instrumental cause, which is faith alone. The traditional Christian theology, however, is entirely consistent with itself. The efficient cause of justification is God himself, loving and merciful. The meritorious cause is Jesus Christ, who lived without sin, died, and resurrected. The formal cause is sanctifying grace, which changes a person within. The instrumental cause is baptism, which cleanses a person and allows the spirit of sanctification. The material cause is the justness of the soul, made so as a direct result of being cleansed, reborn, and sanctified. Firstly, the Christian scriptures are clear in saying that nothing impure or defiled can enter heaven. So right there, forensic imputation has much explaining to do. Secondly, Paul speaks of members of the church as temples of the Holy Spirit. It seems to me rather nonsensical that the Holy Spirit would seek to dwell within unholy temples. So let's briefly examine some Christian texts and make points that are relevant to the description of traditional theology that I listed. The just do not sin. Each man that is born of God doeth not sin, for the seed of God dwelleth in him, and he may not do sin, for he is born of God. The blood of redemption, spirit of sanctification, and the water of regeneration are one. They cannot be separated, and justification occurs with sanctification. This is Jesus Christ, who came by water and blood, not solely in water, but in water and blood. And it is the Spirit that testifieth, that Christ is verity. And there are three which bear testimony in earth, the Spirit, water, and blood. And these three are one. We participate in the divine nature. How all things of his divine virtue that be to vitality and piety are rendered to us by the cognition of him that called us for his own glory and virtue, by whom he hath rendered to us maximal and precious promises, that by these things ye shall be made partakers of the divine nature, and flee the corruption of the concupiscence that is in this world. Notice it says that the desire to sin, concupiscence, is in the world, not that the world is sin. We are saved through the washing of regeneration, not of operations of justice that we did, but by his mercy he made us safe, by the laver of regeneration and renovation from the Holy Spirit. The purpose of salvation is reconciliation of all, and the justification is not alien. We were once alien, but after sanctification, no longer. and he is head of the body of the church, which is the beginning and the firstborn of dead men, that he hold the primacy in all things. For in him it pleased all plenitude to inhabit, and by him all things to be reconciled unto him, and made peace by the blood of his cross, those things that be in earth or in heaven. And when ye were once aliened and enemies in sense, in malign operations, now he hath reconciled you in the body of his flesh through death, to exhibit you saintly and immaculate and irreprehensible before him. I argue that the absence of accepting this internal change of the soul in Reformed theology has far-reaching and negative effects. Exchanging what was once a refined understanding of spiritual alchemy for a forensic declaration of a sinner falsely called just is simply tragic for Western thought. When someone believes that they are justified through no internal process, no real change, and without any cause of themselves, it creates an ethos of disconnect and animus toward the needs of others, self-esteem, and human development in general. The concept of alien justification is directly linked to the Protestant notion of total depravity. And when you teach someone that everything they do is sinful, and that their nature is irredeemably evil, and that there is nothing they can do about it, then if one believes that, the cognitive norm is that the limitations of their thoughts and behavior are bound toward misdeeds and ill will. So as expected, Protestant thinkers of the 17th and 18th centuries believed the world is a place of deceit and distrust that must be controlled, and we must expect the worst out of people. And the Reformed solution to the problem of corruption is no less than a pretext, because faith alone is essentially reliant on a kind of intellectual admission. It has nothing to do with broadening of limits of human behavior beyond self-interest and misdeed, and thereby correcting. Rather, it argues for an almost fatalistic worldview in which all evil is forensically justified by believing in the goodness of someone else, namely Jesus. There is no participation in the divine nature in Protestant theology. The righteousness is outside of you, alien, and there is no philosophical ground for participating in moral behavior aside from a few statements of Paul saying that it is not good to go on sinning. The traditional Christian view is more optimistic, because there is not only an internal change and a participation in the divine nature with God and his goodness, there is the mandate to do good works for the sake of one's spiritual health, which is the meaning of salvation. The prospect that the soul undergoes purification and changes to participate in a better nature seems to me far more optimal than the worldview of total depravity and alien justification.